my defeats and my problems and all of the things that I can sink into.
I am what they call a praiser, a worshiper, and
Not everyone who sings about faith actually lives by what they preach. The gospel world was once seen as a sacred land, a place with no room for lies or betrayal. But the truth is far more brutal. Some voices once hailed as angelic were later abandoned by the very community that praised them. They were shunned for various reasons, some for actions so unforgivable. Even decades couldn't erase them. Reputations crashed, images shattered overnight. The stories of these 21 gospel artists I'm about to tell you are living proof. From legendary singers once called the voice of God to those who once made entire churches bow their heads, they're all on this blacklist, and you won't believe who's at the top. 21. Marvin Gaye, the fallen gospel angel, killed by his own father in a tragedy that rocked music history. Marvin Gaye was once considered Motown's golden voice, a soul and R&B icon with countless hits like What's Going On, Let's Get It On, and Sexual Healing. He started in the church, with gospel as his spiritual foundation, but from a heavenly figure in the community's eyes, Gaye spiraled into darkness. His downfall didn't happen overnight, but once it started, it was unstoppable. In the 1970s, amid Motown's glitter, he sank into cocaine addiction. Every performance became a lie. Behind the scenes were debts, divorce, and nights lost in drugs and loneliness. His marriage to Anna Gordy, sister of the Motown boss, once a symbol of power and love, crumbled under infidelity and violence. His sketchy relationship with Janice Hunter, just 17 when she met Gaye, was the final blow that destroyed his public image. A man who once sang about divine love was now branded a traitor by the gospel community, a lost sheep beyond salvation. In 1984, his career in ruins. Marvin was living with his parents in Los Angeles, depressed and broken in body and spirit. His father, Reverend Marvin Gaye Sr., was a strict and abusive man. Their lifelong tension finally exploded. On April 1st, after a brutal argument, there was no forgiveness left, no prayer strong enough to stop the storm. His father pulled the trigger with the gun Marvin himself had gifted him to protect the family. One shot. Marvin Gaye died at home just one day before his birthday. His death shocked the entire nation, but what enraged people more was that his father only received a suspended sentence. The community split in two. Some blamed Gaye's reckless lifestyle, but others couldn't deny he was a victim of a glamorous yet rotten system from within. 20. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the rejected legend who died alone, wrapped in scandal. Sister Rosetta Tharpe is an essential name in the creation of rock and roll. She stunned the world with her electric guitar and fiery gospel vocals in hits like This Train, a pioneering icon, but also a victim of her time, shunned by the church, criticized by society, and dying in painful silence. At a time when gospel was still a sacred holy ground, Rosetta brought it to the Cotton Club, a smoky haven of men puffing cigars, women dancing, and alcohol flowing, in the 1940s. Her image with an electric guitar on a nightclub stage enraged many black pastors. They called her a traitor, an offense to God. Many churches banned her permanently, but Rosetta didn't stop. She kept playing, kept singing, defying the backlash. And it was this rebellion that birthed a miracle. White youth began imitating her, and rock and roll was born. In 1951, she caused a massive stir again by holding her third wedding to her manager Russell Morrison in a stadium with over 25,000 guests. People called it a ticketed wedding, and churches blacklisted her completely. Worse, rumors of a same-sex relationship with singer Marie Knight spread like wildfire in a conservative religious world. That was unforgivable. But the worst was yet to come. After decades of burning passion, Rosetta was ravaged by diabetes, losing a leg in 1970. Still, she kept performing. Through the pain, music was her lifeline. By 1973, she died in poverty and isolation. The woman who helped birth rock and roll was cruelly forgotten by history. The community that once turned its back on her remained silent as if she had never existed. 19. Sam Cooke, the gospel angel who died in a motel, shrouded in unsolved mystery. Sam Cooke was once God's voice, a bright face and a voice that could silence an entire church. He was the soul of the Soul Stirrers gospel royalty, but his glow shattered in disgrace. From angel to the subject of sordid rumors, he died under circumstances that left the world stunned. Early morning on December 11, 1964, Sam Cooke was found dead in a cheap motel in Los Angeles. Shot 3 times, nearly naked. Reports said he was drunk, panicked, and stormed the front desk looking for a woman named Elisa Boyer, believed to be a prostitute he met the night before. She vanished with his money, clothes, and ID. In a rage, Cooke allegedly broke things and was shot by motel manager Bertha Franklin. The news exploded instantly. A man who once sang of God and inspired millions of faithfuls dead in a seedy motel, nearly nude, tied to a sex worker. The church was shaken to its core. Many religious events banned his music. Fans were left confused and heartbroken. But that wasn't the only reason he was cast out. Throughout his marriage to Barbara Campbell, Sam was rumored to have been involved with countless women, from fans to colleagues. Despite having children, he was frequently seen drinking, partying, and cheating. When he left gospel to pursue secular music, many said he had sold his soul for fame. Sam Cooke was once an angel with mighty wings, but he fell hard, leaving behind a storm of scandal. 18. Clara Ward, gospel queen accused of incest, homosexuality, and abandoned in death. Clara Ward was the uncrowned queen of gospel, with the Clara Ward Singers. She ruled the stage from the 1940s to the 1950s. Her explosive voice and commanding presence made her a symbol of life, faith, and power. But behind the spotlight was a scandal-filled life with rumors that clung to her till death. It started within her own group. By the late 1940s, whispers began that Clara had a romantic relationship with her sister, Willa Ward. No one dared say it out loud, but gospel circles buzzed with gossip. Some claimed to have seen Clara get overly intimate with female members of her group. In the ultra-conservative black church scene, this was a mortal sin. Some called it criminal. Several churches banned her and her group from performing. She fell from grace, and her career started to slip. In 1960, a new scandal hit. Clara took her group to perform in Las Vegas casinos, places pastors called dens of sin. Gospel meant to honor God, now blared among roulette tables and red neon lights. Churches were outraged, claiming Clara had sold sacred music for cash. They launched boycotts and urged believers to turn their backs on her. But Clara went even bolder. She bought luxury cars and wore glittering gowns like a Hollywood diva. The public was stunned. Many called her the Lost Queen. And then, the price of rebellion came due. From the early 1970s, Clara's health collapsed. She suffered strokes, heart problems, and was in and out of hospitals. When she died in 1973, it was in silence. Only echoes of regret and cold stares from those who once hailed her as a legend remained. 17. James Cleveland, from king of gospel to disgraced figure accused of abuse. James Cleveland was once hailed as the king of gospel, a composer and performer behind countless legendary songs that echoed through churches across America. He was a living monument, the man who elevated gospel to new heights and a must-have name in every major choir for decades. But behind that glamorous title was a life riddled with scandal beyond belief. Starting in the 1970s, rumors began to swirl that James was gay. No one dared mock him publicly, but the whispers and sideways glances never stopped. In the black church community of that era, homosexuality wasn't just taboo, it was considered a direct offense against God. And James, the man who stood on pulpits singing about faith, was now the subject of growing suspicion. No proof ever surfaced, but the doubts only grew over the years. By the late 1980s, a series of explosive allegations emerged accusing James of abusing young boys in his choir. There were no trials, no sworn testimonies, but the rumors spread like wildfire. Alleged victims surfaced in tabloid papers, describing chilling scenes from behind the choir rehearsals. Churches began canceling his concerts. Some pastors took to the pulpit, openly denouncing him as a predator in a robe of praise. People who once adored him turned their backs. His reputation collapsed overnight. In 1991, James Cleveland died of heart failure. He passed away while much of the world had already forgotten who he was or no longer cared to remember. A few close friends tried to defend his honor, but the public had already made up its mind. James died in isolation, his voice silenced not by age or illness but by a world that no longer wanted to hear it. 16. Rance Allen, the rebel king of gospel who was shunned for bringing God's music to the dance floor. Rance Allen was a symbol of modern gospel, a powerhouse vocalist, leader of the Rance Allen Group, and a man who smashed every boundary the genre ever had. He brought gospel to life with a bold, emotional style, but that very boldness got him branded as a traitor to the faith. Starting in the early 1970s, Rance and his brothers toured churches across America, but this wasn't traditional gospel anymore. He mixed in R&B soul, funk, even rock into every performance. Gospel stages turned electric. Audiences cheered like they were at concerts, not church services. And soon, backlash erupted. Older pastors dismissed him as a heretic. Some churches banned the Rance Allen Group outright, claiming they were defiling sacred space. Critics even said their music was addictive like club music. It didn't stop there. In the 1990s, Rance began collaborating with secular artists. He worked with Fred Hammond and various R&B stars. Conservative Christians exploded. They said he was turning gospel into cheap entertainment, dragging God's name into showbiz. Every time he appeared in a crossover project, the media and church forums lit up with outrage. Though he avoided major personal scandals, the emotional warfare never ceased. By the 2010s, his health was failing. Heart disease and diabetes wore him down. Yet he kept performing, pushing forward. Some praised him. Others accused him of being too ambitious, too reckless, and in 2020 his heart finally gave out. Some mourned. Others claimed his death was the result of not knowing when to stop. Either way, Rance Allen was the man who shook gospel to its core in ways no one else dared. 15. Donnie McClurkin, from abused child to famous pastor, mired in controversy over claims of curing homosexuality. Donnie McClurkin is one of the most powerful voices in American gospel. His song Stand echoed in thousands of churches and inspired millions. He was both a pastor and a musical icon. But behind the spotlight was a life torn apart by trauma, controversy, and division. As a child, McClurkin endured horror. At age 8, he was molested by a family member. The trauma lingered for years, carving deep emotional scars. As a teen, he began to feel same-sex attraction, but instead of compassion, he was told it was a disease. That belief sent him spiraling into self-denial. In 2002, he shocked the world by publishing a memoir claiming he was once gay but had been healed through prayer. The statement hit like a bomb in the LGBTQ+ community. Outrage erupted. Protests erupted at his shows. Fans walked away. But the worst part, he didn't stop. Between 2010 and 2015, McClurkin stirred more fury by publicly opposing same-sex marriage. In 2012, he compared homosexuality to drug addiction. The backlash was explosive. Activists demanded show cancellations. In 2013, the Martin Luther King Jr. tribute event in Washington, D.C. dropped him from the artist lineup. McClurkin was caught in a firestorm. One side hailed him as a messenger of faith. The other saw him as a symbol of religious trauma and hate. To this day, Donnie McClurkin remains a polarizing figure. Some pity his painful past. Others accuse him of weaponizing his trauma to justify extreme views. His career glows with success but bleeds with wounds that never healed. 14. Kirk Franklin, the Holy Gospel star exposed for his secret porn addiction. Kirk Franklin revolutionized gospel when he brought hip-hop and R&B into church music. His hit stomp shook the industry and revived gospel for a new generation, bold, fiery, and inspiring. But Franklin's real life wasn't as pure as his songs suggested. It all unraveled in 2006, on The Oprah Winfrey Show. Franklin admitted he had been addicted to pornography for years, starting as a child. The gospel world was stunned. A famous pastor, a preacher of faith and purity, hooked on something the Bible calls a deadly sin. His career wobbled. Some churches canceled shows. Believers accused him of hypocrisy. Some even demanded he resign from ministry. But that wasn't the end. In 2016, Franklin sparked outrage again by collaborating with Kanye West on Ultralight Beam. With Kanye's messy reputation and headline-grabbing outbursts, Franklin's appearance felt like betrayal to the gospel elite. They called him a sellout, someone who traded holiness for fame. Christian forums exploded. A boycott wave began. But the biggest scandal came in 2021. A leaked recording showed Franklin cursing out his son Kerrion with disturbing language. Kerrion then accused his father of years of emotional abuse and abandonment behind a polished public image. The model dad image shattered. Fans were horrified. Some called him a devil in an angel's robe. The same community Franklin once inspired turned against him, and to this day. No one knows if these scandals are just the tip of the iceberg. 13. Ray Charles, the gospel genius who spiraled into heroin, affairs, and church rejection. Ray Charles is one of the greatest musical icons in American history. He started with gospel, shaped by the Baptist Church. He later pioneered a fusion of gospel, blues, jazz, and R&B, creating a sound entirely his own. Hits like What Did I Say and Georgia on My Mind brought him global fame. But behind the glory was chaos. It began unraveling in the late 1940s when Charles fell into heroin addiction. For over 15 years, he was heavily dependent. Arrests piled up, most notably in Boston, 1964. The press went wild. The church community that once embraced him as a gospel prodigy turned away immediately. They saw him as a traitor, someone who defiled sacred music for profit and pleasure, to avoid prison. Charles entered rehab in 1965. The blind genius of faith image crumbled. His love life was no better. Between the 1950s and 1980s, Charles had 12 children with 10 different women, many during his marriage to Della B. Howard. Scandal followed scandal. His affair with Margie Hendricks, lead singer of the Raylettes, made headlines. She fell into addiction, suffered mentally, and died young. Many blamed Charles for dragging her into a doomed cycle of drugs, love, and destruction. In 1959, controversy peaked when Charles released What Did I Say? Though musically rooted in gospel, its lyrics were overtly sexual. Pastors were furious. Some churches banned him for life. They said he profaned sacred music. He was erased from religious events, from a symbol of faith. Charles became the face of secular corruption in church eyes. After that, he never truly returned to gospel, and the church, it never forgave him. 12. Aretha Franklin, the angelic voice marred by early pregnancy, abusive marriage, and lifelong alcoholism. Aretha Franklin began her career in gospel at her father's church, legendary pastor C.L. Franklin. She released songs of faith at age 14. Her extraordinary voice crowned her the Queen of Soul, with countless timeless hits. But behind the spotlight was a life of painful spirals. In 1955, Detroit was rocked when 12-year-old Aretha became pregnant. No one could believe it. Things worsened when, at 14, she had a second child, both born inside the very church her father preached in. Rumors flew was she abused, neglected, out of control. Though her powerful father protected her, many believers lost faith. They called it proof of moral decay under the church's roof. In 1961, Aretha married Ted White, her first manager and a nightmare partner. They fought loudly in dressing rooms, on streets, even backstage. Punches, screams, bruises, the media feasted on it. But what infuriated the gospel community most was her pivot to soul, away from church music. They said she betrayed her roots, her faith, and her family values. Things got darker. In the 1970s, Aretha sank into alcohol and cigarettes. She sometimes took the stage barely coherent. The press didn't let up and the church turned harsher. To them, she was a fallen angel, a voice that once sang salvation, now lost in booze and bodily pain. She was later diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a consequence of years of self-destruction. Aretha Franklin was a legend, but behind the curtain, she was a soul torn open, filled with wounds that never healed. 11. Al Green, scalded by a lover, lost in drugs, lived recklessly, then suddenly turned preacher. Al Green was once a soul music icon, a mesmerizing voice with hit after hit ruling the charts. Born into gospel through a family singing group, he abandoned faith for fame. But his life wasn't just music. It was a storm of scandal, tragedy, and redemption. The biggest shock of his life came in October 1974. while showering at his Memphis mansion. Green was suddenly attacked. His girlfriend Mary Woodson threw a pot of boiling water on him. He suffered third-degree burns, nearly died from the pain. As he lay in agony, Mary took his gun and ended her life in his home. Police arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The media went wild. Every detail of his private life was exposed. It turned out Mary had a husband and children, but lived as if married to Green. She wanted marriage. He refused. Her world collapsed. People realized the pain had started long before, from the 1960s through the mid-1970s. Green was addicted to cocaine, partying non-stop, tangled in endless affairs. He lived like there was no tomorrow. Those who remembered him from church now called him a faith traitor. They couldn't accept that a gospel prodigy had chosen drugs and debauchery over righteousness. After the 1974 attack, Green announced he had found God again. He became a pastor and returned to gospel. But forgiveness didn't come easy. Many in the church doubted him. They believed it was all for show, a stunt to cleanse his image. Whether Green truly changed or not, his reputation was permanently fractured. 10. Otis Redding, rumored affair, then killed in a plane crash that shook America. Otis Redding was one of the greatest soul voices in American history. He began in the church choirs of Georgia, singing gospel with fire and passion, then skyrocketed into R&B and soul with classics like Try a Little Tenderness and Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. But behind the spotlight was a stormy and controversial life. In 1962, Redding abandoned gospel and left the church behind to pursue secular music. The religious community in Georgia exploded. Pastors called him a traitor to them. This was a man who had taken sacred melodies and fused them with worldly music, filled with lust and sorrow. Some churches publicly banned him for life. Local gossip circles whispered for years about the boy who'd turned his back on God. Between 1960 and 1967, his constant touring fueled rumors of countless affairs. Though married to Zelma Atwood, Redding was said to have brief flings with women across every city he visited. Back in his hometown of Macon, disappointment turned to fury. Many who once bragged about their hometown star now wanted nothing to do with him. Some churches quietly removed his name from community rolls. Then came the tragedy, December 10, 1967. A small plane carrying Redding crashed into a frozen lake in Wisconsin. He died on impact, just 26 years old at the very peak of his career, and his death shocked the nation. But what came next was even more chilling. In the gospel world, a rumor started to spread the crash was God's punishment for abandoning the church. No proof, no evidence, but that whisper never went away. It haunted his legacy long after the music stopped. 9. Wilson Pickett, drug-fueled, violent, and died alone after being shunned by his faith. Wilson Pickett was once a soul music powerhouse. He began in Southern churches singing gospel with the violinaires, then exploded into fame with hits like In the Midnight Hour and Mustang Sally. His voice was wild, his presence electrifying, but his private life was a slow-motion disaster. By the late 1960s, Pickett was deep in the party scene, heavy drinking, cocaine. Women he was spinning out of control. Arrest after arrest followed for assault, public disturbances, drunk driving. The worst was in 1987 when he brought a gun to a New Jersey bar and threatened people in a fit of rage. The media dubbed him his own worst nightmare. The gospel community was stunned. They publicly condemned him as a disgrace and a warning to young black men. This is what happens when you abandon faith. But it didn't stop there. In 1991 at a concert in Atlanta, Pickett stumbled on stage, clearly drunk, and delivered a garbled, off-key performance. The audience booed and walked out mid-show. His career collapsed. Friends vanished. Church leaders who once praised him now refused to speak his name. In his final years, Pickett lived in isolation, no fame, no fortune, no forgiveness. In 2006, he died of a heart attack in a small apartment, with no family by his side. His funeral was quiet. Some churches refused to hold memorial services, saying he had betrayed everything: God, music, and himself. The man who once set stages on fire died a forgotten shadow. 8. Bobby Womack, from church angel to outcast, shunned for scandalous past and shocking controversies. Bobby Womack was once a promising gospel voice. Starting out with the Womack brothers, a group led by his own father, a pastor. But everything came crashing down when he became entangled in a series of scandals that rocked the community. In 1965, just 3 months after gospel legend Sam Cooke's death, Bobby shocked the public by marrying Cooke's widow, Barbara Campbell. The black community was outraged. Cooke's fans saw him as a shameless opportunist with no morals. The gospel world turned its back on him, even his own brothers severed ties. By the 1970s, Bobby was spiraling into drug addiction. Cocaine and heroin wrecked his health. He was in and out of hospitals, investigated by police for domestic abuse. His marriage fell apart, and his career took a nosedive. Even worse, after the divorce, Bobby was discovered to be involved with Barbara's daughter, Linda Cooke, while she was still underage and while he was still married. That revelation sealed his fate. He was now viewed as a moral traitor by the black church and gospel circles, once a rising star. Bobby Womack had become a cautionary tale, a name that made an entire generation shake their heads in disbelief. 7. Sly Stone, from gospel prodigy to homeless in LA, lost to drugs and betrayal of faith. Sly Stone was once a symbol of talent and light, a gospel prodigy performing with his family and church before rising to fame with Sly and the Family Stone, a groundbreaking act that defined a generation. But behind the glamour lay a nightmare that spanned decades. From the early 1970s, Sly plunged into heavy cocaine and PCP use. His shows turned chaotic, and the band eventually fell apart due to internal conflicts and mistrust. In 1987, he was arrested for drug possession in Los Angeles, sending shockwaves through his fans and religious community. Once seen as a voice of unity and hope, Sly was now banned from churches and branded a betrayer of faith. Legal issues over violent behavior piled up in the 1980s, sinking him further into infamy. Then came the final blow in 2011. Media uncovered that Sly was living inside a decaying van on the streets of Los Angeles, penniless, forgotten, and alone. Some whispered that it was divine punishment for turning his back on the very things that once uplifted him: church, gospel, and faith. 6. Teddy Pendergrass' golden gospel voice crushed by tragic crash and scandal that rocked the black church. Teddy Pendergrass was once hailed as a powerful R&B voice, with gospel roots from the Cadillacs. He soared to fame, seducing millions with his deep baritone and magnetic stage presence. But it all unraveled in a single night. In March 1982, Teddy was in a devastating car crash in Philadelphia. He survived, but was paralyzed from the chest down. Even more shocking, his passenger was Tanika Watson, a transgender woman. The media went into overdrive. Rumors of their relationship exploded across America. Churches that once embraced Teddy now turned away in disgust. How could a gospel singer be involved in this? Worse still, since the 1970s, Teddy had faced rumors of cheating on his wife. After the crash, instead of returning to God, he doubled down on his secular career. Depression, drinking, and rejection from the gospel world turned him into one of the most controversial figures in black music. For many, that tragedy was the price he paid for rebellion. 5. Marvin Sapp, gospel star, dragged into love scandals and financial drama after wife's death. Marvin Sapp was once a rock-solid icon of gospel music. His mega hit "Never Would Have Made It" brought millions to tears. More than a singer, he was a respected pastor in the black community. But after 2010, his shining image began to crack. That year, his wife Melinda passed away from cancer. Fans mourned with him. But just a year later, Sapp was spotted dating Iwinosa Ighodalo, a woman with a history of financial fraud allegations in Nigeria. The gospel community exploded in outrage. They felt he had moved on too fast and disrespected his late wife's memory. Many online called him a hypocrite. Then came rumors that Sapp misused church donations for personal expenses. Chaos erupted. Some left the church. Others criticized him for hiding his wife's illness for years while maintaining a perfect public image. They believed it was all about preserving his fame. His legacy spun out of control, trapped in a vortex of controversy. 4. B.B. Winans, gospel legend hit by domestic violence, division, and political firestorms. B.B. Winans, a cornerstone of the legendary Winans gospel dynasty, dazzled with his solo hits and family recordings. But in 2009, the unimaginable happened. He was arrested in Nashville for allegedly pushing his ex-wife during a custody battle. Though no charges were filed, the gospel world was furious. A religious icon accused of domestic violence unacceptable. Concerts were canceled. His image shattered. It didn't end there. In 2014, BB publicly opposed same-sex marriage and performed at an event hosted by an extremist pastor. LGBTQ groups within the Black community protested fiercely. Boycotts erupted, even within the Winans family. Rumors swirled that BB was resented for leaving the group to chase solo fame. For years, whispers of internal division followed him, undermining the gospel value of unity he once symbolized. 3. Ty Tribbett, youth icon destroyed by infidelity, depression and accusations of defiling gospel. Ty Tribbett rose as a gospel star who blended hip-hop and R&B into praise music. His hit, He Turned It, captured the world's attention. Everything seemed perfect until 2009, that year. Tribbett admitted to cheating on his wife with a choir member. The gospel community erupted. Then came the next shock. His wife Shante also confessed to infidelity. The couple, once the model of virtue, was now scandalized beyond repair. They nearly divorced. Tribbett fell into depression and suicidal thoughts. He stopped performing. Concerts were canceled. Then came criticism of his fiery, hip-hop-fueled performances. Conservative pastors slammed him, saying he defiled gospel music. Churches blacklisted him. Many no longer saw him as a faith leader, just another fallen idol. Even after reconciling with his wife, the damage was done. The scandal left scars that never healed. 2. Kim Burrell, from Queen of Gospel to lightning rod for anti-LGBTQ comments and arrogance. Kim Burrell once reigned as the powerhouse of modern gospel, with her hit Try Me Again winning hearts worldwide. Her soulful voice and commanding presence made her a beloved icon. But in late 2016, everything crumbled fast. A leaked video showed her preaching in church, declaring that homosexuality was a sin and would be punished by God. The LGBTQ+ community was furious. Progressive Black audiences were outraged. Burrell was dropped from the Ellen DeGeneres Show. Gospel radio cut ties. The backlash was massive. But instead of apologizing, she poured gasoline on the fire, doubling down on her words without remorse. Churches disinvited her. Young artists distanced themselves. And behind the scenes, rumors of a bitter feud with Yolanda Adams and her diva attitude only added fuel to the fire. Once admired, Burrell became a name many in gospel just wanted to forget. 1. R. Kelly. From church choir boy to gospel's most disgraced villain. R. Kelly was once hailed as a rare talent rising from a small church in Chicago with a deep gospel foundation and soulful voice. He became a global sensation. But behind the fame was a storm of horror. It all began in 1994 when Kelly illegally married 15-year-old Aaliyah. That was just the beginning. Over the next 3 decades, he was accused of imprisoning, abusing, and exploiting young women. In 2019, the documentary Surviving R. Kelly exploded onto screens, exposing brutal truths. The gospel community that once supported him turned their backs. In 2021, Kelly was finally convicted of sex trafficking and racketeering. His personal life had already crumbled. Ex-wife Andrea Kelly and his daughter accused him of emotional abuse. Andrea once admitted she had considered suicide. Sex tapes leaked. Cheating scandals erupted. His former church community in Chicago cut ties completely. Once beloved, R. Kelly fell into a pit of disgrace with no way out. Who would have thought that behind the angelic voices of gospel lay so many scandals and tragedies? The gospel world isn't just light and faith, it's also full of shadows, feuds, and falls from grace. Each name on this list was once a beacon, but a single misstep, a scandal, a choice, a moment of weakness can destroy everything. If you were shocked or have thoughts on these stories, drop a comment below. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more untold truths about the gospel world and the people who shaped and shattered it.